There's a woman you may have known in your life. She looks grown. She dresses well. She says all the right things. She smiles in pictures. People admire her. They envy her. But when you get close, really close, you feel something strange. It's not that she's immature in the way children are. She's not throwing tantrums or running around recklessly. Number. It's something deeper, more invisible, a kind of emotional weightlessness that shouldn't exist in a fully grown adult. A detachment from responsibility, a fear of self-reflection, a hunger for attention masked as independence. And this is where Carl Jung steps in. Jung believed that many adults walk around wearing the costumes of maturity, jobs, relationships, routines, without ever developing the psyche required for true emotional growth. And among women, this can manifest in quiet, hidden ways that most people fail to see. This video isn't about blaming women. It's not about labeling or judging. It's about understanding. Because what you don't understand controls you. But what you understand, you can heal. At Cognit Haven, we don't run from uncomfortable truths. We explore them with compassion, clarity, and courage. So, what does female immaturity actually look like? It starts with a pattern. She avoids accountability. When something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. Her boss is toxic. Her friend is jealous. Her boyfriend is just not man enough. She rewrites reality in a way that shields her from facing herself. She fears criticism, not because it's unkind, but because it threatens the fragile structure she's built. A structure that says, I am always right. Any suggestion that she could be flawed? That sends her into defense mode, silence, blame, or tears. Whatever it takes to avoid looking in the mirror. Jung warned that if we don't consciously evolve, we become stuck in what he called the child archetype. And this is not just about being childish, it's about being emotionally undeveloped. An immature woman can be intelligent, she can be educated, she can even be successful. But emotionally, she's still waiting for someone to rescue her, to make her feel whole, to carry the weight she refuses to face. You may see her chasing love, not to grow, but to escape. She doesn't want a partner. She wants a savior. She expects someone to fix what she won't touch inside herself. And when that doesn't happen, when the man beside her starts to set boundaries, asks for respect, expects emotional maturity, she doesn't rise to meet him. She punishes him with distance, with drama, with words that cut. She doesn't see him as a partner in growth. She sees him as a threat to her fantasy. Carl Jung said that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For immature women, relationships fail not because of fate, but because of unexamined wounds. And those wounds? They usually began long before you met her. Sometimes she was the golden child, praised for being pretty, polite, obedient, but never taught how to think for herself, never allowed to express anger, never encouraged to confront reality. She was trained to perform, not to process. Other times, she was the invisible child, ignored, overlooked, emotionally abandoned. She learned early that her needs didn't matter, that she had to create noise or chaos or charm to be noticed. In both cases, she never truly developed her own self, only roles, masks, personas, the sweet girl, the cool girl, the tough girl. But who is she without all that? She doesn't know. And here's the painful part. Neither do you. You might think you've fallen in love with her, but you've fallen in love with an image, a projection, something she's learned to perform, because deep down she's terrified that her real self isn't enough. That's why she needs constant validation, not attention, validation. She needs someone to tell her she's good, that she's right, that she's wanted, that she's special. Because without that external feedback, her identity starts to crumble. You'll notice she changes when she's not the center of attention. Maybe she picks a fight. Maybe she withdraws. Maybe she posts something vague on social media to stir reaction. It's not manipulation in the traditional sense. It's survival. A desperate attempt to feel significant. And here's where most men get it wrong. They either try to fix her, or they run. Neither works. Because she doesn't need to be fixed, and she doesn't need to be abandoned. She needs to wake up. She needs to realize that no one else can give her what she refuses to give herself. Self-respect, emotional honesty, and growth. Jung would say that the path to healing begins when the mask cracks, when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of changing. And for many women, that moment never comes, because the world keeps rewarding the mask. She gets likes, she gets compliments, she gets men chasing her, she gets sympathy, she gets admiration. But inside, she feels hollow. She feels afraid. She feels unknown even to herself. And that's the tragedy. You can't love someone who refuses to show up as who they are. You can't build with someone who thinks blame is a form of communication. You can't grow with someone who punishes you for seeing the truth. At Cognit Haven, we believe in compassion, but also in clarity. If you're a man trying to love an emotionally immature woman, you have two choices. Stay and enable her dysfunction. Step back and invite her to grow. The first choice will drain you. You'll feel like you're constantly apologizing, walking on eggshells, trying to protect her from every perceived slight. You'll lose yourself. The second choice? That takes courage, and it may cost you the relationship, but it might also be the very wake-up call she needs to begin her journey toward maturity. Not everyone will choose the path of growth, but if you love her, truly love her, you'll want her to become whole, even if it means letting go. Jung didn't write to comfort people. He wrote to awaken them, and sometimes awakening begins with loss, not because you didn't care, but because you finally did. She smiles when you praise her. She lights up when you notice her. But the moment you ask her to take responsibility for her actions, for her words, or even for her pain, something inside her shuts down. She turns cold, defensive, even hostile. Why? Because deep inside her, long before you ever met her, a quiet belief took root. If I'm not perfect, I won't be loved. And that belief is at the core of female emotional immaturity. Carl Jung taught that the parts of ourselves we reject don't disappear. They go underground. They form what he called the shadow, the hidden side of our personality. The shadow isn't evil, it's repressed. It's the emotions and truths we were taught not to feel. For many immature women, their shadow is filled with fear. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of being judged. Fear of not being enough. And so, instead of confronting that fear, they build a life designed to distract them from it. They stay busy. They chase applause. They romanticize chaos. They surround themselves with people who reinforce their ego but never challenge their growth. And they call that freedom. But it's not freedom. It's a beautifully decorated prison. On the outside, she's loud, confident, playful. But inside, she's terrified someone will eventually see who she really is and walk away. She's afraid of confrontation. She sees feedback as attack. She feels threatened by boundaries. Because all of these things demand emotional maturity, and she never learned how to hold that. Not because she's evil, because no one showed her how. At Cognit Haven, we explore truths that most people avoid. And here's a hard truth. Emotional immaturity doesn't disappear with age, success, or beauty. It disappears with self-awareness. And self-awareness only grows when you're willing to sit with discomfort. But immature women, they run from discomfort like it's fire. They'll end friendships over small misunderstandings. They'll leave relationships the moment accountability enters the room. They'll twist narratives to remain the victim, even if it costs them their integrity. Because if she's not the victim, she has to face the possibility that she hurt someone, that she caused damage, that she, too, carries the power to destroy. And that thought, it terrifies her, because then she'd have to change. She'd have to let go of the idea that she's always innocent, always right, always good. And growth requires sacrifice. It requires the death of ego. But her ego is the only thing protecting her from the deep well of shame she never learned to face. This is what Jung meant when he said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You can't become whole by pretending to be perfect. You become whole by acknowledging your imperfections and learning to live with them, not in shame, but in truth. And immature women struggle with truth. They live in curated realities. They tell themselves stories that make them feel safe. He was toxic. They were jealous. No one understands me. But the moment you say, "Let's look at your part in this," you'll see her armor snap into place. She may call you controlling, dismissive, emotionally distant. She'll say you're the problem because accepting any responsibility feels like an attack on her identity. And here's where many men fall into the trap. They start apologizing for truths they didn't create. They begin questioning their sanity. They lose themselves in her emotional fog. And that's not love. That's emotional codependency. Jung would call this an unconscious dynamic between the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within us all. A woman who hasn't matured emotionally often seeks in a man the strength she refuses to cultivate in herself. And when that strength confronts her avoidance, she feels betrayed. Because she didn't want truth. She wanted safety. But not all safety is love. Some safety is avoidance dressed up as comfort. True love isn't safe. It's honest. It holds up a mirror and says, "Look, this is where you're hurting, and this is where you're hurting others." Immature women don't want mirrors. They want masks. They want the illusion of being loved, without the labor of becoming lovable. And that's where the pain begins, because no matter how hard you love her, no matter how patient you are, no matter how many times you try to explain your heart, she won't hear you. Not until she decides to stop running. Not until she sits alone and asks herself, "Why do I keep pushing good people away? Why do I feel empty when I'm alone? Why do I sabotage what I say I want?" These questions, they are terrifying. They mark the beginning of the death of the immature self. And very few people are brave enough to face that. It's easier to keep living on the surface, to change jobs, change cities, change partners. But unless you change yourself, nothing ever really changes. Jung believed the psyche will keep creating the same situations again and again until we finally learn the lesson hidden inside. So she'll date the same kind of man over and over, then say, "All men are the same." She'll lose the same kind of friend repeatedly, then say, "People always betray me." She'll sabotage every opportunity for real intimacy, then say, "No one truly loves me." But the truth is, she has not matured beyond the patterns she created to survive childhood pain. And those patterns are destroying her life. If you're watching this and thinking of someone right now, ask yourself, does she take responsibility for her actions? Does she apologize when she's wrong? Does she allow herself to be challenged without punishing the person challenging her? If the answer is no, then you're dealing with someone emotionally stuck. Not bad, not evil, just stuck. At Cognit Haven, we believe that even the most emotionally immature people can grow, if they choose to. But choice is everything. You can't love someone into maturity. You can't sacrifice your peace, hoping they'll one day wake up. That awakening must come from within. And it often begins with a loss, a breakup, a betrayal, a moment where the mask finally cracks. Sometimes, life has to break you so you can finally meet the parts of yourself you were taught to avoid. And for immature women, that moment is both terrifying and sacred, because it means they're finally ready to grow up, not just on the outside, but on the inside, not for a man, not for approval, but for themselves. She tells you she loves you, and maybe she even believes it, But her version of love is filled with fear, control, and dependency. She wants connection, but on her terms. She wants closeness, but only when it doesn't challenge her. She wants to be adored, but not questioned. And when real love arrives, patient, deep, imperfect, it terrifies her. Because now, for the first time, someone sees through the performance. Someone sees that she isn't as strong as she pretends to be. That her independence is a mask for fear. That her silence isn't peace. It's a shutdown. That her overconfidence is hiding a fragile core that never learned how to grow. Carl Jung believed that until we integrate the shadow, we remain ruled by it. For an emotionally immature woman, her shadow runs the show. She doesn't choose partners, her wounds do. She doesn't react to the moment. She reacts to her past, dressed in today's disguise. That's why the relationship feels so confusing. Some days, she's deeply loving. Other days, she's distant, blaming, passive-aggressive. You feel like you're constantly trying to win her back from herself. And the truth? You are, because she's not here with you. She's still stuck in a version of her that never emotionally evolved. She may be 30, 40, even older. But inside, her reactions are still driven by the scared little girl who never learned to soothe herself without validation. Who still believes love means attention, drama, rescue. And what hurts most? She doesn't even see the damage she's causing. She thinks you're the problem because you won't play along, because you won't apologize for things you didn't do, because you won't carry her emotional burdens anymore, because you finally said, "I can't do this for both of us." And that moment, that's when her world begins to shift. Because when someone stops enabling her behavior, reality starts knocking on the door. Carl Jung wrote that only what is truly oneself has the power to heal. So if she ever heals, it won't be because someone forced her. It'll be because she finally saw herself clearly and chose to grow. But not everyone will. Some women will keep blaming, keep running, keep performing. And for the men who love them, there's only one path forward. Let them go lovingly and focus on your own emotional clarity. Because a woman who won't meet herself cannot meet you. You deserve love that isn't conditional on your silence. You deserve connection that isn't built on control. You deserve a partner, not a child in an adult's body. At Cognit Haven, we believe real love begins when both people take responsibility for who they are. No saviors, no enablers, just two grown humans doing the work together. So if you've ever been confused, heartbroken, or stuck in a relationship that felt like a roller coaster, remember this. It's not your job to teach someone how to grow up. It's your job to protect your peace. And if she chooses maturity one day, it'll be beautiful. But until then, you must walk forward alone. Not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. If this touched something real in you, don't forget to subscribe for more raw truth and emotional depth, only on Cognit Haven.